Some of you may not have liked the definition of direct action that I've been using in this series. Personally, I think that's great. There is a more radical definition of the term that I'm personally quite fond of, but because this video series is basically a direct adaptation of the book Organizing for Social Change by the Midwest Academy, I'm going to be using the language that they use. All of the things that we cover in this series about how to organize are not exclusive to this definition of direct action. Being a better organizer is being a better person, so I think the more traditional definition of what direct action is worth going over. So what exactly does direct action mean in this other context? Well, it comes from the world of anarchists. Scary, I know, but anarchists get a bad rap. At some point in the past, the word anarchist stopped being a political philosophy that meant someone who thinks we should seriously question and investigate all of the hierarchies in our society to see which ones we really need and which ones aren't worth the trouble. It started to mean people who throw bombs and just hate everything. And then, unsurprisingly, all of the people who do throw bombs and just hate everything started calling themselves anarchists, and the cycle continued. But once you talk to actual anarchists, people who self-describe that way and have political philosophies which justify their anarchist position and aren't simply contrarians, you start to realize that they are actually some of the most compassionate people who hold individual autonomy and individual rights in the highest regard of basically anyone that I've met. When we in this series say direct action, we're usually referring to a situation in which people are organizing where they want a decision maker to do something. Some government bureaucrat, some elected official, some corporate executive, or whoever it is. The more radical definition of direct action says that this isn't really what direct action is. I'm going to let an actual self-described anarchist explain this. This is David Graeber speaking on the Occupy movement, specifically the movement in New York City, Occupy Wall Street. This is from the book The Democracy Project, which he wrote that goes into much more detail about the entire Occupy movement, its history, its origins, and what happened in New York. Most obviously, the refusal to make demands was, quite self-consciously, a refusal to recognize the legitimacy of the existing political order of which such demands would have to be made. Anarchists often note that this is the difference between protest and direct action. Protest, however militant, is an appeal to the authorities to behave differently. Direct action, whether it's a matter of a community setting up an alternative education system or making salt in defiance of the law, an example from Gandhi's famous Salt March, trying to shut down a meeting or occupy a factory, it's a matter of proceeding as one would if the existing structure of power did not exist. Direct action is, ultimately, the defiant insistence on acting as if one is already free. Everyone is perfectly well aware the power structure does exist, but acting this way denies any moral authority to their inevitable, usually violent, response. This raises another important distinction between civil disobedience and direct action, which is often mistakenly thought to be simply a difference of militancy. Civil disobedience is assumed to be a matter of blockading things, direct action of blowing them up. Civil disobedience means refusal to comply with an unjust law, or legally valid but unjust order. As such, an act of civil disobedience can also be a direct action, as when one, say, burns one's draft card, on the principle that one would not have draft cards in a free society, or insists on one's right to be served at a segregated lunch counter. But an act of civil disobedience does not have to be a direct action, and ordinarily, acts of civil disobedience do not question the legal order itself, only specific laws or policies. In fact, they often explicitly aim to work within that legal system. This is why those engaged in civil disobedience so often welcome arrest. It allows them a platform to challenge the law or policy either legally or in the court of public opinion. Ultimately, the tactics and actions that an anarchist would call direct action are more radical than those that this series will call direct action. I personally agree completely with the more radical definition and with the actions that I described above and many of the things that get called direct action. However, as we will go over in episode 3, while there are people ready to jump at the opportunity to truly go against the existing injustices in society and act as if they were already free, most people are not there yet. Even those who want to and agree with the actions are often hesitant or cautious about actually doing it themselves. Living as if you're actually free does have consequences. Most of the actions that get called direct action in this series are thus best thought of as first steps to what could eventually be more radical forms of action. Once someone is denied something that they shouldn't have even had to ask for in the first place, once they personally experience the injustice of these systems around us, when they start pushing against the boundaries, they are much more willing to be radical.